What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. This is our first prediction show of the 2025 season. I am Mike Sparks. Joining me, as always, as is Justin Ashcraft. Too many A's in there. Justin, how are you doing, man?
I'm great, man. It feels like it's good to be back in the saddle again. As far as like, hey, Riverhound soccer is here and it's coming, and so I'm excited about the game tomorrow night and excited to have a normal Saturday night routine again of watching soccer. And Josh and I have a big game in the morning of sorry, Liz and I have a big game in the morning as far as Brighton Fulham, and then we get to watch the Riverhounds tomorrow night. So it's gonna be a great day.
Yeah, definitely good to get back into the swing of things of having games on Saturday nights. Just putting that back into the schedule, and yeah, I'm absolutely looking forward to it. As I look forward to this show, you and I have both said that like this is one of our favorite things to do each week because you're literally just kind of sharing your thoughts on the news of the week and taking a stab at what we might see based on all of that, which I know we both like sort of digging into stats and numbers and trying to see what we can uncover. So lots going on that the team announced over the course of this week. I want to get your thoughts on a lot of it. The first big thing is that the Hounds have signed goalkeeper Ben Martino, which for a lot of people, you're like, okay, like it's a former RDA guy, but you personally were like, hold on a second, who? And so, what do you know about Ben Martino? Why are you excited about this?
Yeah, I don't know a ton, but so Ben Martino, I guess through maybe his sophomore year of high school was with RDA. But then at that point left and went to the Philadelphia Union Academy, which is the MLS team that I follow. And I've heard nothing but good things out of the Philadelphia Union organization about Martino and kind of what he brought to the team, what he brought to the academy, and how he was playing and all that kind of stuff. He decided to go the college route, went to Virginia Tech for a couple years, played well there, had a good career at Virginia Tech, and then signed with Nashville coming out of Phil. The Union have a weird relationship with goalkeepers just because of Andre Blake having been around the organization for a long time and kind of established his starting role. There's really nowhere for goalkeepers to go, and so I think Martino is probably one of those guys coming out of college early saying, hey, I want to go pro, that the Union would have liked to sign, and I think there was some conversations there, but he also knew he wasn't going to get a chance, and so he decided to go to Nashville, just to get a chance to play and all of that kind of stuff, and spent 2 years with Huntsville. I've heard nothing but good things about him. He seems like a young keeper who has some talent, who I think played a little bit with Bethlehem Steel. I don't quote me on that, but I think even in high school was playing a little bit with Bethlehem Steel as an academy on an academy contract. So I feel like he's just got some ability, and it feels like one of those guys that I think Bushy can work with and make better. And so I'm excited about the signing, just thinking like it could be somebody who could be around here for a long time. And then I think also with it being a 1-on-1 contract, it provides your cover if Eric Dick decides after this year that, hey, I want to go explore something somewhere else. It provides your cover there. So I feel like it was a great signing and a good move by the Hounds, and am just excited what I've been hearing from the Philadelphia Union organization about Martino. So
I'm curious in your thoughts because you said that, and I think one of the first things that I asked you was, does he get game time here, though? I think the 1-on-1 option thing is interesting because we've said in the past how the Hounds almost never re-sign a keeper, let alone two. But this could be sort of the turning of the page on that, where, like you said, they could be covering themselves. So if Dick does decide to leave for greener pastures at the end of the season, you might have Randolph and Martino that you then carry forward and they both get time. Do you think that there's a chance that Martino gets minutes this year?
I don't know. It depends how Bob plays his keepers. I think a lot of times, especially in the Premier League, you see like a lot of teams they have their keeper in the league who starts almost every game in the league, but then they'll have kind of a cup keeper. And I could see Bob doing something similar with Martino of like, hey, cool, but he's never done that in the past, so I don't know that's a legitimate expectation. But I could see him being like, hey, cool, those games against the League One teams in the Jägermeister Cup, you got him. That sort of thing. I don't necessarily know that I see him playing a lot of minutes this year, and I don't know that I want that, but I do think I could see him passing Randolph, just from what I'm hearing from the universe, and I don't know enough to compare the two. But
Yeah.
just what I'm hearing, what I've seen, what I know of Martino, I could see him passing, passing Randolph as the second keeper on the bench too. So if Dick does go down, I could see him playing minutes, but we'll see. And I think it's the other thing that I like about Martino, or like about the signing, is he's 22 or 23, and so this is like, if he had gone the full 4-year college route or stayed in college for all 4 years, this was kind of be his first out of college. But he's got 2 years at Huntsville, which I think is really cool for him too. He's coming in with experience, so I don't necessarily want a keeper competition. I want a clear number one. But I like the fact that we have options coming behind him.
Yeah. No, fully agree. Interesting, him coming from Huntsville. It seems like that pipeline between Huntsville and Pittsburgh is very strong, which we can talk about in a second. I think it was Barnes is from there, Suber is from there. That's where Robbie played. So it's just interesting. You mentioned sort of the cup stuff, which this sort of segues into the next thing. I did have a chat with Rob Vincent that we put out as a podcast and as a video. I encourage everyone to go check it out. Rob is always super transparent. He did get another tick mark on the board for it, which he said at the end he gave Bushy a hard time about, which is great. But the two big takeaways for me from that were I asked him specifically about sort of the cup competitions and, him as a former player and as a coach, how seriously do they think they will take the Open Cup, the Jägermeister Cup? And I think the interesting thing sort of reading between the lines is that they may feel like they have a legitimate shot at winning the Jägermeister Cup because they don't have to go against MLS teams, whereas the Open Cup is almost always won by an MLS team. So it will be interesting to see how much emphasis they put on that compared to the Open Cup. Because if you were to ask me what would be our best chance at winning hardware at this point in the season, I'd love to say, the championship, but we've also said that the playoffs is such a crapshoot. If you could walk away with a Jägermeister Cup, there's some hardware for you in sort of the first year that it's here for the championship. So that was interesting. Like I said, we'll see how that shakes out. And then the other thing is that he mentioned a new backline. So I think many of us were kind of assuming that the guys that were coming back were all going to be the starters. So, maybe at center back, you have Asumano, you have Suber, you have Biasi, you have Etu. But, Vincent specifically said a new backline, and he went through and talked about the players, the air quotes rookies that he is most excited about. And so it will be interesting. We're going to get to our predicted 11 in a minute, but I thought that was interesting as well. Did you get a chance to listen to the conversation? Was there anything that sort of jumped out at you?
Yeah, I think that I was excited by the fact that he was excited about some of the new players, and feeling like these aren't just new signings of like, hey, we've got to fill a roster. Like, you can't go into the season with 18 guys. You've got to go into the season with 23 guys. And so it's not that kind of situation of like, okay, cool, we just needed to fill the roster and have backups just in case. But it seems like some of these guys are legitimate contenders to make a difference, make an impact on what happens for the Riverhounds season. And that just feels really good. It feels like, okay, cool, if the coaches are excited about it, then I can be excited about it. And like, we'll see how that plays out on the field and all of that. But I think I want coaches to have confidence in the players that they've signed. So I was excited about that.
Yeah, I can't remember if he said it on air or not, but I sort of mentioned to him how, you and me and Steve this weekend sort of did our breakdown by position and tried to say, like, we think, at least on paper, we are a stronger team. And he like echoed that. He was like, yeah, he's like, compared to last season, he feels like we're in a much better spot. And so hopefully that bodes well. Again, we'll get to our prediction for this game and sort of how we see things shaking out. But it's good to see that at least he's feeling confident in a way that, not that he wasn't confident last year, but he feels better than last year, which is good. A couple other bits of news, and then we'll actually talk about this game. Josh dropped his Dogs of War short. We need to come up with like a better name for this, but Josh came up with this idea in the offseason. The goal is to try to do one for every single game, but basically dig into why these games matter and sort of put out a short or a reel or a TikTok, however it is that you're consuming, sort of short form videos. And it's just a quick 2 minutes. This is why you should care about this game. It is out there now. Make sure that you go check it out. I don't want to spoil too much, but a lot of really good stuff there. We could talk a little bit about some of the points that he makes when we get into our predictions, but absolutely go check this out on all of our socials. The last bit is just the USL Power Rankings came out, which mean absolutely nothing, but I figured I'd at least share it with you guys as it relates to us in North Carolina. They have the Hounds at number 10, and the description was, we know the Hounds are going to have one of the stingiest defenses in the league, but the addition of Augustine Williams to the forward line makes them a dark horse contender. I think 10 is a little low. I do think people are sleeping on this team. They have North Carolina at 14, and they said, if we're honest, this might be a little conservative for North Carolina's starting point. There's a lot of quality returning and upgrades in defense. Could make the side a really good one to watch. Do you have any sort of thoughts on the power rankings and sort of where they have us versus North Carolina?
No, I don't have too many thoughts other than I think the Hounds, I'm okay with us sitting at 10 at this point. I really, I think it's like I think the Hounds get the Bob Lilly effect of I think if this was any other team, it's kind of the Notre Dame effect too of how they get ranked in preseason polls most years. I think it's like if this was any other team and we'd had the year that we did last year, we'd be somewhere in the 20s, but it's like Bob Lilly. Okay, cool. We got to give Bob Lilly a little bit of credit. And so I'm okay with where we are sitting right now. I think I'd rather be like, let's start the season at 10 and finish at 1 or 2, than start the season at 2 or 4 and finish at 20. So
yeah,
I think I feel good about where we're sitting.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about North Carolina. I had the conversation with Vincent and, trying to get a sense of how much are the Hounds paying attention to North Carolina versus just paying attention to themselves. He kind of made the point that, really it takes 2 to 3 good games into the season before you have really any sense what the other team might do. And there was actually some hesitancy to try to predict too much because you don't want to prep the Hounds for this is what, we think North Carolina is going to do. And then you get it completely wrong. So that said, just kind of looking at what happened last season and looking at the players that they are bringing back, which, the USL power rankings noted last season, we ended up with the exact same number of points, 48, which is right in line with Josh's video where last season, both times we played, we drew. One was 0-0, one was 1-1. We ended up in 7th place. They were in 8th place. And that's because the goal differential was 13-11. We had 2 more positive goals than they did. So very tight teams coming out of last season. They did bring back a bunch of returning players. A couple names to watch as we get into the game. Tonight is basically up top. They have Anderson and Conway, who combined for almost half of their team's goals. Anderson had 13, Conway had 12. And they got 56 goals last year, which was tied for 5th across the entire league. So they can score goals. And then on the flip side, they have Jake McGuire, who, if you've been around the Hounds long enough as a name that keeps popping up, he's back as their keeper. And he's also no slouch. Dick had 14 clean sheets. McGuire had 12. So right there behind us. So when you really kind of look at these two teams, there's a lot of similarities. The difference being that, I was about to say that North Carolina, they did score more goals than us last year, but on goal differential, we ended up at a +2 more because we had more, defensive standout games. How are you feeling about North Carolina just in general, Justin?
Yeah, it's hard because I'm caught in two minds of I hear what Vincent's saying about, hey, we don't have a lot of predictive, we can't look at things and go, okay, this is definitely what they're going to do. Yes, you have all of last year that you can look at and go, hey, this is what we think they're going to do based on what they did last year. But their personnel might have changed, all that kind of stuff. That all being said, I think for me, it's much more important of what the Hounds do and how the Hounds play together and what the game looks like from their perspective. And I think you may not see the best form of their system, or you may not look at it and go, oh my gosh, look at the perfection of every little movement on the field and every little thing that's happening. And that may not be the case. The first game of the season, okay, that's fine. But what I want to see is I don't want to see a ton of misplaced passes. I don't want to see a ton of easy giveaways at the back. I don't want to see a ton of, sitters being missed, in front. I see enough sharpness and enough clarity of system and direction that we can go, okay, I see what the Hounds are trying to do, and maybe the sharpness is not there yet, or the full weight of their system is not there yet. But we see enough to go, okay, I feel good about what's happening with this team. And so I don't know that, predictions aside, I don't know if that even means a win. Good stuff out of the team, then I go, okay, we've got something to build on that we can go forward in. I think North Carolina, they're a good team, and they, they did well last year, and I think they're going to continue. I don't see them having a huge drop-off, bringing back their goal scorers, bringing back their keeper. I don't see a huge drop-off. And so I think more than anything, I just want to see a good game.
Yeah, agreed. Let's talk a little bit about the Hounds themselves and how we actually see this team setting up. Because I agree with you. I think that I'm much more interested to sort of see what this team does. There's been a few games that we've been able to see in the preseason, but like we said, the one was against a college team, the other one was in a snowstorm. So we really don't have a good sense of what's going on. What's interesting to me is in the conversations that we've had, I think it started with Suber saying, we're playing a different system. And then Robbie sort of reiterated that, they want to make sure that we don't come out slow. We got to make sure that we're scoring early and trying to pick up points. And then follow it up with Rob Vincent specifically talking about we gave up too much possession last year, and that he thinks the personnel that we have this year helps us to retain possession more and generate more quality chances. And so I'm gonna throw out my starting 11, and then we'll sort of see if you agree with that or what changes you would make. There's a couple of caveats in there, and we could talk about them after I sort of go with what I think we might do. But I think we'll start with Dick in goal. Although I would not be sure. There's always some position every year that we're just like, oh, definitively, like this is who's starting. And then you show up and like Lily's pulled the switcheroo. It's got to be, I think it's going to be Dick, but I wouldn't be totally shocked to show up and see that it's Randolph. I think it's Dick. Across the back, sort of using the information about, Vincent saying it's a new backline. I think our backline is probably Biasi, Suber, Max Broughton, and Junior Etu. So bringing Broughton in to play center back with Suber, it's something that we've seen from a couple preseason games. Broughton seems to have brought the goods, so I feel pretty confident that will be the center back pairing is Suber and Broughton. The question for me is whether or not Etu starts out wide or if they play him up a little bit closer to the goal. Steve mentioned, I think during our last show, that he's had some conversations and they would like to get Etu further up the field. I just don't know if in the first game of the season if they do that. I think Lily sort of rolls with what he knows and tries to be more conservative. We're away. We're at North Carolina. You don't want to lose. So like you kind of keep what you know and try to roll out the guys that know the system and can perform for you. And I think Etu obviously fits that bill. After that, it gets a little bit crazy because I think if Jacqueline weren't injured, then I'd have a much better chance at trying to speculate who could be up top. But with Jacqueline out, I think that you could either try to swap somebody in for him directly, or again, you try to do something where you put the guys on the field that you trust, that are going to know the system, that are going to retain possession, that might generate chances for you. So I actually went with trying to get basically all the midfielders on the field at the same time. So Walty, DG, Mertz, Sample. And then I also threw Charles all in there just based on what we've been hearing from, Rob Vincent sort of waxed pontificately. That's not right. Anyway, he really likes all and was saying that he brings the energy and that, if he's on the field, then maybe DG can play some different roles and Walter can play some different roles. So maybe he gets a start and then Augie up top. I don't know if that's actually what's going to happen. I wonder if they aren't going to try to do a more like-for-like swap for Jacqueline, and maybe you put like a Larson in there and play more of like a 4-4-2. But based on everything we heard, if I'm guessing, I think that's what I'm guessing it's going to be. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll caveat my thoughts being I haven't seen the team yet.
Yeah.
So college team snowstorm aside, I haven't seen what we're trying to do at all.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what it's going to look like. What I think it could look like and what I'm excited about is it's pretty. I think we have the personnel and I think we have the players that we need to play a pretty similar system to what Brighton plays and what the Philadelphia Union are actually playing this year too for the first time. And what it looks like to me is almost 4-2-3-1 in attack or in defense, and a 4-2-2-2 in attack. And I think when you have, I like your shot about the back line. I think it's pretty. Biazzi's going to play out right. I think Etu in this first game is going to play out left. He's going to get chances to go up the field, because I think what happens in this system pretty easily is in an attacking situation, Walty will sit between the center backs. Center backs will push out a little bit, and then you get your wing backs running up the side of the field. And that allows, I think it allows DG and All to both kind of play the 10 role and kind of be hanging out and figuring it out and all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as you lose possession of the ball, Mertz can drop back into that center 10 role, or that center mid role that he plays so well, and it can put pressure on, and that gives Augie the space to run as a central striker and try to create press and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that system would work really well, and I think it gives us the best shot of putting on the field. And then I don't think, what I like about that then is that it doesn't change when Jockeson comes back, because Jockeson then can move back a little bit when we're defending and then move forward when we're attacking, and it gets them both on the field. And so I like that system, and I like the way that we could play it, and it seems like we have the personnel to do it. So I don't have a lot of issues with your thought. Now, the question that gets going in my mind is, what's Osumanu's role this year then, and how do you get Osumanu on the field if Broughton and Suber are going to be the center backs most of the time? And I don't know the answer to that, other than, hey, guys are going to need rest at times. But yeah, so I think if you're going with like, hey, who does he trust, all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't be surprised to see Suber Osumanu as the center back pairing, and maybe giving Broughton some time towards the end of the game. But we'll see.
Yeah. The other issue with this lineup is then you start looking towards the 70th minute, and it's, who are you bringing off the bench? Because we have a ton of midfielders that we can pull from. But, Vincent sort of alluded to some of the guys, need to get a little bit bigger. Some of the guys need to work on, some defensive stuff, and whether or not you throw them in right away, I don't know. But this will be a very interesting one, because this is always the most interesting, because we have nothing to go off of. Like you said, we're purely just sort of taking little tidbits here and there and trying to piece together. As soon as we see what happens in this game, we'll probably be basing a lot of our predictions, next week and the following week off of what we saw here and what worked and what didn't work and all of that. The Asumanu thing is interesting to me. I know that, listen, I think Asumanu as a person is amazing. Had a great conversation with him last year. You guys can go check that out. But he was also kind of error prone at times last year. And I think of all of the guys that came back, especially, isn't he on a 2+1 deal? Like, I feel like he gave him like extra time on his deal too. It just felt like the biggest question mark out of all of the guys that came back. So maybe with this new system, maybe he trusts him a little bit more. Maybe he does get a little more time. I don't know. But if I was, sort of taking what Vincent said with like new defensive line, I'm not pulling Biasi out. I'm not pulling Etu out. I'm probably not pulling Suber out. So the only one that I could think of that I would swap out would probably be Asumanu. But I guess you could also make the argument that it's a different system, and therefore I don't know how often we actually saw Suber and Asumanu as a back two or a center back pairing last year. So maybe that's what he was referring to. But
the other thought, as you were saying, that could be, does Etu play up higher and you save All for later in the game, knowing that like he is, so could Etu play as almost your left winger, and do you bring somebody in as left back? Yeah. And try to, get your more experienced midfielders on the field, or your more experienced players on the field, and then, you bring, that's All's your 70th minute midfielder. I don't know the answer to that, but I feel like it could be interesting to see if that's the situation. That could be the other swap. Yeah. Who's playing left back.
Yeah, I was thinking about when I was actually putting this together. I think it's Pierre Barnes. I think that's his name. He was one that when it came out that we signed him, I think he also came from Huntsville. Yeah. and he can play either outside back. It sounds like he's speedy. So in theory, you could play him back there. You bump Etu up the field. And like you said, it sort of gets more into that kind of like 4-2-3-1 kind of formation where you have Etu out wide and he's making more challenges. He has less of a defensive duty, which would be very interesting to see shake out. I'm just wondering if this being the first game of the season, us going away to North Carolina are going to be up to win this one because it's on their home turf. Fans are going to be there. They're going to be excited. It's the first game of the season. How much of a swing do you take versus knowing that, okay, really, Vincent was like, we're going into these games to win. Well, he was talking about the cup as well. We're going into the games to win them. But this first game of the season, based on what happened last year and the struggles that we had, how much of this is also, we don't want to lose this one. Like, or we don't, we got to get at least a result. And so does that play into how you sort of structure your lineup? It'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to seeing the lineup.
There's two specific games that kind of brings to mind for me. There was a season opener against Cincinnati, and then there was the opening of Lynn Family Stadium in Louisville. That I feel like Bob just went in and was like, all right, let's make the first 20 minutes of the game the most boring game of soccer that you can watch. Take the crowd out of it, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. And I could see that being kind of his mojo here of like, all right, let's just play a real boring game of soccer for the first 20 or 30 minutes. Get the crowd out of the game, like figure out how to do that. And then okay, second half, let's figure out how to go forward. And make something happen, and so I could see us being like, I could see our Slack channel during the first 20 minutes of the game being like, what is happening? But then the last 70 minutes of the game being more excited about what's going on.
Yeah, agreed. Give me a score prediction, man. How do you think this plays out?
How does it play out? I don't know. 1-1 draw. I feel like it could be a 2-2 draw too. I think the first game of the season, we didn't play them until May last year, so we were 2 months into the season, all that kind of stuff. So I could see this being one of those games of like, it's a sloppy first game. Everybody's making mistakes. Everybody looks bad, and it's a 2-2 draw. So, but my more realistically is like, all right, we both get a goal off of something, and then shut down from there.
Yeah. I think my hope is a 1-0 win. I think we try to shut it down defensively. I think that, now I'm going to misremember. We always have this conversation at the beginning of the season where it's like the first few games favor the offense or favor the defense. I would argue that if you have your defense stuff in check, it actually favors the defense because the offense needs to still kind of click a little bit. If it favors the defense and we feel good about our defense, then I think that regardless of what North Carolina may try to throw at us on attack, if they're still trying to work out the kinks of that, I feel more confident with our defensive line and Eric Dick to kind of keep that at bay. And then maybe we get like sort of a garbage goal. I could just as easily see this being like 3-2, 3-3, like it just going the other opposite direction. So my prediction will be 1-0 Hounds. But who knows? We'll just throw caution to the wind here and see what happens.
You didn't want to be bold and go ahead and just predict 3-2.
Yeah, let's do it. Sure, 3-2. There we go. You just talked me into it. Thanks. Justin, anything else on this game or anything else that you want to talk about as it relates to sort of getting ready for this game and heading into the season here?
No, I don't think so. I'm excited to get going. I don't think, probably like middle of January, I would have said, I'm hesitant for the Hound season. And that probably went into how I was feeling about the Philadelphia Union too. That I'm just like, the American soccer season can wait. And like, who cares when it comes back around? But based on some of the results in preseason, what we're hearing from the coaching staff, players on the team, guys who've been around a little while, I feel a lot better about this team now, and I feel excited for the season to start and ready to kind of get in that routine of Saturday night soccer. So excited for the game tomorrow night.
Yeah, Agreed. The game's at 7 p.m. It's going to be on ESPN Plus and Sportsnet Pittsburgh. I know that the Steel Army's having a watch party in Lawrenceville. I think it kicks off at 6:30. So make sure you get down to the pitch to watch the game. Another shout out to our friends from the Steel Army who put together Houndsy. They put together their Hot Takes episode that aired earlier this week. If you have not had a chance to listen to it, it's a lot of fun trying to predict all sorts of crazy stats and fun things. It's another great way to gear up for the season. So after you're done listening to this, make sure that you go listen to that. Otherwise, hopefully the team goes out and puts on a good show, and we'll be back with our reactions. Oh, wait, before I even sign off, a couple of other things real quick. We are going to put out player ratings this year, rankings. So that'll be over on Substack. So make sure that you go check that out, mongols.substack.com. Basically, as close to the game being finished, we will have player ratings that we put out, and then we will follow it up with our reaction show the following day. So, okay, now we can get out of here. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with more Hounds content for you very, very soon.